Hey kids, welcome back to On Stage, Off Stage. I'm your host, George Sapio, and this is episode number 126, February 2020. And it is a very special episode indeed. Our guest is Isabella Madrigal, a 17-year-old playwright whose play Menil and Her Heart deals with the subject of indigenous women who have been murdered or have gone missing. Isabella, a member of the Cahuilla Nation, wrote, directed, produced, each for the first time, and acted in the production. The play has had a profound impact and not only won her scholarships and awards, but she was also invited to speak about the issue at the United Nations. On Stage, Off Stage spoke to her early last November. We began by asking Isabella how it felt to take on such a horrific subject.
I think that this Native storytelling project, Menil and Her Heart, it was born out of the lack of Native representation in the arts. You know, I have a background in acting. I've been doing it for my whole life. I go to a performing arts high school, and I'm in the acting conservatory there. And something that I continually noticed, first, was that there's not a lot of roles for Indigenous actors, specifically not for Indigenous women, and definitely not for Indigenous girls. And so, as I began this process, kind of going through it, I realized that this lack of representation, it wasn't going to be fixed by just seeing a Native face in the media, because that wasn't going to truly portray, an authentically Indigenous experience and Native story, which is something that's definitely omitted from the national narrative. And, a lot of that is rooted in history, historical trauma, this idea of eradication and termination of the Native people. And so for me, that was definitely kind of the calling piece towards creating a project like this. And so I kind of I thought we had to start by going back to the beginning. And so I researched and I re-listened to and gathered these traditional Cahuilla stories. And that's the tribe that I'm enrolled in through my father's side. And as I was reading these stories, I ended up really being struck by about 4 in particular. And they all had this kind of unifying theme of not only strength and resiliency, which is a key aspect of what the play is about, but also they linked and had this kind of wisdom towards, the global epidemic that we face today and have been facing for centuries, which is the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And, from there, it really all came together with being inspired by these traditional stories. They definitely inspire this play. And it's also about a larger call to action for larger outside audiences, which is to continue the fight for these women and girls. And for me, going through the process, raising awareness to the fact that 84% of Native women will experience violence in their lifetimes, that in the United States they go missing and are murdered at rates 10 times higher than the national average.
That's almost too incredible. That's such a huge amount. 10 times?
Mm-hmm. Yes, 10 times higher. And obviously, even though this issue is clearly so big, 95% of these cases, they go undocumented and unreported by national news media. So clearly there's a lack of national consciousness. And so this play has been about addressing the first stages, because we really are only in the first stages of understanding the magnitude of this issue. There's no national inquiry right now into the disappearances of these women. The annual statistics on them aren't included in the annual report to Congress. And so I think that this play is about kind of bringing that story forward. And for me, it's been, an incredible experience in terms of identity and just being able to have a cast that is, filled with people who are really about bringing this story forward, Native and non-Native alike. But just being able, I think, to see yourself in this larger story is really important and healing for Indigenous communities, aside from the activism that it provides. So it's been a truly incredible process, and it's just all of these things coming together.
Right.
That are truly inspiring. And my cast definitely inspires me to continue, because it is for I have a little cousin in the play. She's about 7 years old, and it's written for her. It's written for my sister, Sophia. It's written for my mother. It's written for all these women, who not only the women who have gone missing and are murdered, but also, the women who are here, who are staying, who are fighting. I think just being is an incredible testament to their strength. So that was definitely, the inspiration.
Well, the key is to get this play seen by as many people as possible. And looking at the article I saw, you're going to California State University, San Bernardino, and something I didn't even know existed because it's not within my realm of existence, California Genocide Conference in San Diego.
Yeah. Next week.
Yeah, that's this. Well, this is going to be November. So what is that all about? The Genocide Conference. How are you going to be participating?
Yeah, so this play, something that's really been unique about it is that it's had this touring aspect, and we actually over the course of this past summer, we took it to the Indian Child Welfare Act conference statewide in California, and we performed it there. And we started generating this interest to have it seen at other conferences, and that's how we got in touch with the Genocide Conference. But it's definitely, very timely, this play, for the kind of conversations that are coming up now. And the play itself, right, it's about this larger taking. It's about the taking of women, but it's also about the taking of land, culture, language, identity, and all those things that make up the genocide that was done to the first people of this nation. And so, the First Nation. So it really is, about healing from that historical trauma. How do we continue? And it was really important for me that this play ended with a message of strength and even of hope. And I hope that's the right word, because it is about continuation. And, that we have gone through so much, but, we're still here. And I think that's something that's to be celebrated. Yeah.
No, hope is a good word. It's without that, there'd be nothing. It seems like it's too small of a word.
Yeah.
It's but yeah. Okay. Is this your first play that you've written?
Yes, it is. It's just the first time I've embarked on any sort of writing. So it was really, just a crazy fast timeline. I ended up writing it, I think it was over like a week or two. I was trying to get it in for this deadline. We wanted to perform it in February. And, I think it was, once I had the idea to take these more traditional stories to inspire it, it was just so much easier to let that voice through. And I think, being involved in theater for so long was definitely a huge part of what inspired me to write it, and was really incredibly helpful knowing as an actor, what I would like to perform. It's really inspiring to be able to share your own words. So, yeah, it was the first kind of playwriting thing I've ever done, but I definitely want to continue.
I would encourage you to do so. I know from my own experience that playwriting is one of the most extraordinary experiences that I can go through over and over. And to feel those words come through you onto the page is a remarkable experience. You said it only took you a couple of weeks to write this?
Yeah, it was for a deadline, and so it was just one of those things where you kind of just sit down and you just write it out, and so it really was just kind of just putting it out there, just getting it up as soon as I could for as many people to see it as I could, and what's been really great is I got a lot of support in helping me to continue it, and I'm thinking I'm even going to go back and maybe rework some sections of it, maybe send it off to other places, and just the interest that it's generated has really inspired me to do more, just even with this one play.
I would absolutely encourage you to send this to as many places as possible. There are a lot of outlets and ways for other people to become aware of what you've done, and a lot of experts out there who are willing to help you do so. So, but you also directed this, right?
Yes.
So had you directed anything before?
No, this was definitely a project of firsts.
Okay, let's talk about this, because what did you go through trying to translate your own words to physical and representational action upon a stage?
Right. And so, the unique thing about this project was that, it was all non-professional actors. It was all community members, volunteers, most of whom who had never done really any kind of theater before. The story really resonated with them, and they were willing to give up their time to come to rehearsals, to come to shows. And I was just really taking anyone who wanted to be a part of it, because it was about this community healing. And so that presented, a whole bunch of challenges for me in terms of, I felt, maybe I'm not qualified. It's a huge thing to tackle to teach people the art of performance, first and foremost, before you can even start work on the play itself. And so what I ended up doing was I had some workshops, and that was just kind of drawing on my own experiences, what helped me, kind of figure out how to portray a character. And then we started going into the rehearsal process. But it didn't end up being as terrifying as I thought it would be, which ended up being a really pleasant surprise. And I think it was because, I did have a lot of support.
Which is always critical.
It is, definitely, especially for something like this. So definitely, like, some of the challenges were, dealing with a cast. It ended up being about 20 people, which is, it's a larger cast for a play. And it was all ages. We had, like I said, I think a 4-year-old was our youngest, and then a 90-year-old elder was our oldest member. And so it is definitely about, my role as, a 17-year-old. But, it was really great because everyone there was a lot of respect in the cast. And everyone was just willing to do, what needed to be done, which was really incredible and amazing. And, it just ended up being, something that was really, really special. And because it wasn't supposed to be, this perfectly polished theatrical piece, professionally produced or developed, it was coming from the community. It's going to be authentic no matter what. And I think that really is what everyone's trying to capture with theater, is this authenticity and this truth-telling. And because of the way it was set up, I think that was inevitable.
Well, I think because you mentioned that there was a lack of high expectations, professional level. Okay. It's easier to create without having that somewhere in the back of your head. When you were doing this, when you were talking to folks, your actors, all right, do this. This is the line. Move here, and having written this thing and trying to put it on stage, was there anything that you learned about the play that may not have occurred to you before, that once you actually did put it on the stage?
The great thing about the play was that there was just new things that I kept discovering. And every time we would put it up or we would read through it. I remember when we had our first reading with the cast and we were just sitting around the table. And so to give you some context, the play follows a young Cahuilla girl who goes missing, and then the efforts of her sister, and that's who I play, Missoon, Heart in Cahuilla. It follows her journey, and she ends up kind of being led through in and out, weaving in and out of some of these traditional stories. So it has an element of magical realism, and she eventually ascends into this star world, is kind of the only way to put it, where she has to make the decision if she's going to return back to Earth, to her family, back home, and to continue, the fight for the missing and murdered, continue her life. And it was something that I hadn't realized was kind of the duality of the message, because I definitely approached this as a story of a girl who goes missing and of the importance of continuation, but I didn't even realize about the kind of the other way we lose our women, and especially, young girls, which is, suicide. taking your own life when you get that hopeless and that depressed and just overwhelmed. And it was something like I discovered in my character, and assumed that decision to stay or to go back is something that I think I didn't even realize was part of the script itself. Was her decision, was another thing that was really about what this play was about, and the multiple ways that, you know, young girls and young women in society, the different struggles that they face, and that issue obviously is something that's huge within Native youth especially. And so I think it was really powerful for me to be able to tell a story where someone decided to stay.
Right.
And that was about that hope, like we were talking about. And when I wrote it, I had no intention of idea that would end up happening. But, you know, just those little things that you discover, I think it's just really rewarding. Yeah,
it's watching it go up on stage. You almost always learn something about that. You talked about suicide and, of course, the missing women, the murdered women. And I want to ask about what kind of advocates are there? Advocates there within your society, within your connection of people, services. There must be something that women can reach out to, right? For guidance, for mental health, for practical assistance in changing their situation.
Yeah, so you're talking about within indigenous communities, kind of help.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Right. Yeah, so, you know, when we're talking about kind of the healthcare system and all the health disparities that exist within American Indian and Alaska Native communities, I think is a testament to kind of where it's failing. I think, you know, kind of an issue with the system is the idea of treating people, you know, kind of using the dominant Western model. It doesn't always work for indigenous communities, is what we've seen time and time again. You know, there's a lot of recent research that's coming out that's kind of showcasing when you bring in this aspect of culture to any sort of healing, to any sort of mental health group, you kind of see this great improvement, this faster improvement. American Indian communities heal faster and more consistently when they have access to a cultural practice. They did a study with women, and they found, you know, that's definitely something that can help. And it's something that, you know, it's harder to have access to. And I think that kind of brings up this idea of an urban Indian, because it's something like 71% of all American Indian people live off reservation in cities, and that was part of the, you know, the relocation of American Indian groups and that assimilation. And so there is definitely a lack of access to culture, which can be so healing, and it's so large a part of identity, which I think, you know, having a strong sense of identity is very important, especially in young people, to kind of figure out. And so, you know, my father was actually responsible for bringing back some of the bird songs. It's a traditional practice. It involves singing, and it kind of tells the migration story of the Cahuilla people to their homeland. And, you know, only a fraction of those songs remain because of, you know, history and eradication efforts. And so I think just knowing that, you know, we only have so little left, and we're losing more and more as time goes on. And so it's really important that people are able to kind of preserve those practices. So for me, I really wanted to preserve those stories. You know, I saw that was something that was really important for me. And I think it comes back to this idea of this project, the Native Storytelling Project, as something that's healing, right? We don't heal by forgetting, we heal by remembering. Something Leslie Marmon Silko said, who's a female indigenous writer. And I think that was definitely about what this play was about, non-conventional forms of healing. And I think that is really the way that we're going to survive, is by, you know, changing how we deal with the healthcare system, because of those health disparities culture is definitely prevention. So for those negative outcomes.
Yeah, I know with a lot of indigenous peoples, there seems to be a struggle between those who wish to maintain their heritage, continue the stories, and continue their ethnic characteristics, and there are those who want to modernize and move into the system that is around them, which always, sadly, I think, splits the people in the culture in two different ways. Instead of uniting folks, there seems to be two polar opposite ways of dealing with the crisis. Hey kids, thanks for tuning in to On Stage, Off Stage. I'm your host, George Sapio, and this is episode number 126, February 2020. Our guest is Isabella Madrigal, a 17-year-old playwright whose play, Menil and Her Heart, deals with the subject of indigenous women who have been murdered or who have gone missing. Isabella is a member of the Cahuilla Nation, and she wrote, directed, produced, and acted in the production.
Yeah. So I think when we talk about, this kind of, moving forward and how do we move forward, something that's been part of my journey through this process is that I am taking these traditional aspects. There's a lot of kind of traditional things that show up in this play. We have some of the bird songs. We have, these traditional stories and some other traditional songs. And so I'm always very careful to make sure that, I'm trying to bring these practices in the right way, because this play is something that's new. And so, it's my interpretation, my cast interpretation, how we interweave these two things is something that's really exciting for me. And what's been really incredible is that I've been able to get, a lot of community support and elder support. We first put up on the play at the Dorothy Ramon Learning Center, and Ernest Siva, who is a Serrano elder, he was really supportive in helping me, in supporting my vision of this new play as a form of activism, but using these traditional things. And I really think, that there's something that's so exciting about that. There's a lot of, modern Native artists who are coming forward and who are bringing tradition with them, but they're doing it in a way to kind of, shape this unique indigenous identity as we have it today, in society, which is something that is so inspiring to me. And I think whenever you talk about, people not wanting to be Indian, my grandfather, he went to Indian boarding school. My father's side, there's a bunch of family members, relatives who went to Indian boarding school, and part of what they were taught there is, kill the Indian, save the man. The closer you are, the farther away you are from being Indian, the closer you are to God. This idea of you and yourself and your identity as indigenous as evil. And so I think whenever you talk about people wanting to push away that culture, you need to realize that the larger root of that issue is because of all the things that have been done to the community, right. Taking away children from their families on reservations and telling them that they are evil, that they have to cut their hair. It's just that kind of trauma, you carry it with you. And, I've been studying, I don't know much about epigenetics, but it's something that I'm really interested in, and this kind of idea that we carry, the experiences of our ancestors on our DNA. We carry that forward, and I think that that's something that's very true in Indigenous communities. We carry that strength, and that's, I think, culture and tradition is so important to us. And then you also carry all the trauma that comes along with it. And so, it's a very complex issue, but it's incredibly inspiring the way art is being used right now as a means of expression and healing.
Yeah, well, this issue is one of the things that when we teach other cultures in schools around the country, this is one of the things that is completely ignored. Or else it's glossed over in one way or another. We get a sentence or two in a textbook, or we get something completely and utterly rewritten to be so egregiously false that it is criminal in its printing. And these are some of the things that need to be changed, and ways of communication. And if we're going to tell the truth, especially with history, we need to tell the whole truth, because many times the truth is horrible and ugly. Let's move on to the next one. You've worked with Diana Burbano.
Right?
Yeah. She was a previous guest on Stage, Offstage, and a remarkable performer and person in her own right. What did she contribute to the production?
Yeah, so I've actually known Diana for quite a long time. My mother knows her, and I actually took some acting classes under her, so she's been kind of a mentor in that way for me since I was pretty young. And then, when I came to her and I said, I have this story that I want to share. Will you support me? Will you be my mentor? And, it was a resounding yes. And that's something that, just so wonderful about her, as a she's a playwright, and she's trying to bring forward these untold stories too. And so she's been really, incredibly supportive in helping me, bring forward this story. And so after I had kind of written this play, I brought it to her and I said, will you read it? What should my next steps be? And so she ended up kind of reading it and then also helping me facilitate that first read through of it. And kind of just getting it up on its feet. Hearing it was really, important for me, I think, and it's been a significant moment for me, just hearing your words, and then, is it coming across how you want it to? And so, she was very supportive in that way. And then, she just kind of continued to definitely help. And, she's doing all this amazing stuff. So, kind of more recently as the play has started to pick up more traction, she's been really a helpful force in just guiding me on figuring out, where I want to take it, what are the next steps.
Okay. That's always critical. What are the next steps for this work?
Yeah.
Yeah, where do you want to see it? How far do you want to go with this? Where do you want to go with this? Right.
So I think, I really think that the issue that it's tackling is a global one, right? Indigenous people across the world, I think this, I think it is a war, this silent war that's been persisting for centuries, against Indigenous women in particular. Violence against women and is used as this war strategy to kind of weaken, demoralize, and eradicate Indigenous populations. And so I think it is something that can be received globally. And, that's very far into the future, maybe, just thinking out loud, but, being able to bring it to that wider audience is something that I'm definitely very interested in. And I do want to see this produced. I'm actually a senior in high school right now. And so, things are going to change for me, depending on where I go, to college, or it's going to change the way that this project looks. And that's going to be because I'm no longer going to be able to act in it as frequently. And, we've been having this cast be a part of this for, I guess at the end of the run, it's going to be almost it's going to be a year almost, which is crazy. And so, it's going to change. It's going to need to change, the way that we're doing this kind of process. And so I'm kind of thinking about that. We're thinking of maybe starting a nonprofit for Native storytelling, Native voices telling Native stories, creating some sort of toolkit, a theater for social justice, where we can, within an Indigenous context, try to get these kind of tools out to other Indigenous community leaders who are interested in something like this. And so that's kind of what we're looking forward to the project. But I think that, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and it is an exciting time because so much is undecided.
Yeah, it's a remarkable milestone project, and so fraught with important issues and discussions, and it's going to be upsetting to so many people, which is what theater should be in many occasions, because theater always has been one of the more active modes for continuing cultures, for continuing stories, for continuing points of view. And it's most of it is so non-Broadway, most of it is so non-Hollywood, that the plays you go out to see, you stand a much better chance of seeing plays that will resonate much more truthfully with the population. So you've got quite a powerful tool at your disposal here. So, you should definitely take it as far as you can with this. Okay, let me talk about the audience, because we've ignored them up until now. We've talked about everything about this, and let's talk about the early audience reaction and later audience reactions. What was that like for you to watch the audience and to hear what they had to say?
Yeah, so something that we adapted into our performances was this talk back. And so we have, my sister and I and any other members of the cast who want to be a part of that can be a part of the panel. And we have a moderator who's also a member of the cast. And we just we kind of discuss, the larger meaning of the play, but we also take a lot of audience participation, audience comments, and audience questions. And for me, that's been something that's been really incredibly rewarding and really neat, I think, to be able to have that aspect, because it does feel like when you just leave with the end of the play, there's like this question of, well, what's next? What can we do? What is it for? And so, having that talk back has been something that's been really, I think, important part of the play. And so, in the beginning, we put it up, like I said, in this cultural center, and it was really a small gathering hall. It wasn't a theater, so we had to, make our own curtains and stuff. And so that was a whole kind of a different thing. And then we ended up getting about 100 people to that first performance, which was something that, I didn't think that we would get so much interest, but it was all kinds of people. We had definitely a large Native showing. And what was really neat was we also had a lot of Native youth from different programs that were bussed in to see the show. A lot of academics too came, which was interesting. And then a lot of non-Native, people came to learn about it. And so that was really kind of neat. And it was, extremely positive, especially in those first steps, which I think is crucial in any project. It's great to be able to have that and then to continue forward. And, I think we've performed it. We've done 4 performances, and we've had about 800 people see it, a little more than that maybe. And, we just performed it at Sherman Indian High School, which is an all-Native boarding school. So that was, neat, because you get a lot of the kids that go there kind of. So it was really neat to have that youth audience there. But like I said, we also did it at the statewide Indian Child Welfare Act conference. So that was largely to a Native community, and that was probably, the scariest performance for me.
Yeah.
As
it's a bigger step, that's for sure.
Yeah. It was kind of our first one, and just, I was like, oh, I hope people will like it and accept it, because there's always this fear of when you try to bring something new and you're taking culture and you're putting in tradition and you're putting it in there. Maybe you always worry that there might be some backlash. People are like, oh, they're not doing it in the right way. And, there's definitely validity in those concerns. And so it was something I was like, oh, scary, because when you bring it to the indigenous audience, will they receive it well? And what's been really great is that, yeah, they have. And I think, I really tried to get, elders in on this, cultural people that I know have a lot of, weight in the community who know what they're doing, to be a part of bringing this show together. And so that's been a unique challenge, I think, for this process, because it is an Indigenous story. You got to first and foremost make sure it's accepted by that Indigenous community,
right.
Because that's who it's for. And then also, this other thing of we're trying to raise awareness for this issue. So how do we bring it out into the mainstream? Because that is definitely what it's going to take to get, substantial change for this issue. And so it's been a unique challenge of this, to bring it out to that mainstream audience. It's something that I definitely wanted to make sure was that I wasn't compromising anything. I really didn't want to have to tailor it or water it down or make it more accessible. I think, people have generally responded to that in a pretty good way. I think there's some appreciation for that authenticity. And I think, now people are wanting to hear those untold stories. And I think that's really been helpful for this.
I think anytime you tackle something cultural, an interpretation of something cultural, you run the risk of discontent, backlash. Like you said, somebody saying, "Oh, you didn't do this the right way because this is the way the story goes, and this is the way the story should." And there are so many different ways of telling the same story and getting the same message across. Yours is just another stage in that evolution of that particular story. Mm-hmm. Was there anything the audience responded to that surprised you, that set you back, saying, "Oh, I didn't know they were going to react to this," or something that challenged the way that you particularly look at the work?
One thing that I think the biggest, just popping into my mind right now is one commentator during the talk back. She wanted to know kind of where the men were in my story. She wanted to know, why are there more male characters, or, where is their place? She was confused about their role, maybe in not only the play, but in this larger issue. And that kind of made me step back and look at my play and be like, it's very female. There's a lot of strong female characters, but that was kind of intentional. It is supposed to be, the story of a young Indigenous girl, the story of her sister, her mother. I took some, characters from these traditional stories, strong female characters, which I think was really neat. But, I think, as I was kind of looking back, I do think, though, that there is a masculine presence in that. And I think it is also about, kind of the male role, I guess, in this issue, which is, to have that respect. And, there are a good amount of male actors in my cast. There's a lot of really, great men who come to be a part of this play. And I think that is about kind of this Indigenous man and this idea of respect for women, which I think is so inherent in the culture. This idea of respect for, Mother Earth and respect for women in general. And I think, for me, this play, it is also for the men who stand with us, who fight with us, because it's going to take, everyone coming together. And so I really hope that there's that sense of unity in this play. And for the most part, I think that there is. And so it's been, kind of interesting in that way for me seeing that. But another thing is there's kind of this scene in the play, which is, it's a kind of a protest scene. And it's one of the first few scenes in the play. And it's this, and at the end of the scene, there's this list of these women who have gone missing or who have been murdered. They go and they're listed off. And so what's been really neat is I've been able to, neat and tragic, but I've been able to add to to kind of take names from my cast it started with, but then, later from some audience members who wanted to see, the remembrance reflected of someone that they had known, reflected. I think that is part of the healing. So being able to, it really is like a living a living piece that we keep adding to as time goes on. And so I think it will continue to keep it expanding and evolving.
I hope we don't have to add too many more names to that section.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. One or two more questions, and then I will let you go. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. This has been a remarkable experience for you, for someone who hasn't written anything before, who hasn't directed anything before. And you seem to have taken on a project of such immensity that I'm wondering, how has this changed you as an artist? I mean, how do you see yourself now as a theatrical practitioner? Okay, because you started as an actor, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So here you are now. You've produced this, you've directed it, you've written it. Who are you now, and where do you see yourself in the future? Let's say near future.
Yeah, so this play for me has definitely been kind of life-changing, I think it has been a lot about me, uncovering that idea of identity. And I think, the indigenous experience is, it's confusing sometimes, understanding, the culture and the tradition in the context of modern day. And I think it's unique, this idea of sovereignty, sovereignty of tribes in the United States. And so it's always been kind of a weird thing for me to go and take history classes, but then to realize so much has been omitted and to have a kind of alternate identity is something that's very unique to indigenous people, especially within the United States,
Yeah.
And so for me, it's definitely been incredibly empowering to be able to share this story unapologetically and, being able to be an activist for this cause has been something that's been, really, really great for me, kind of shaping who I am. And also, acting has definitely always been something that I've loved. And, I'm really inspired by theater for social justice. I've always been, I love to go see, I just saw this one woman show. I was in New York over the summer, The Way She Spoke, which was about missing and murdered indigenous women. And just to see her kind of doing a similar kind of thing was just the actor. And to hear that play was just really, really great. And so, it has shaped my idea of this idea of being an artist, of what it means to be an artist.
Right.
It was really incredibly empowering to see, my words, be able to speak my own words on the stage and direct others, to kind of share that vision has been really, incredibly. I never thought I would ever write a play or be a playwright. It was definitely not something, I ever really thought of. I was really in this acting world, and then just to be able to realize that, it really is like this way of doing, art that's just so great, being able to do all of it. And I think, great artists can do so many things, which is really, really neat. But yeah. So it's really definitely been about identity. And in terms of where I'm going in the future, so like I said, I'm a senior, so I'm making all those, decisions right now. And I think because of this process, I definitely want to continue to write and to act and to, theater, keep theater alive as a part of my life. And I'm also really interested in this idea of healing. Originally, kind of before I embarked on this journey, I definitely saw myself going down a more conventional route. I was going to, be a doctor, and kind of health disparities were definitely something that I wanted to focus on. But now, kind of having this experience under my belt, I definitely think that something I want to do is definitely still tackling that healing, but I think healing in maybe a different way, kind of combining of the intersection of Western Indigenous, knowledge and bringing that Indigenous perspective to healthcare is something definitely I want to do, and to continue writing and bringing forward more stories. So it's exciting, and I want to keep doing it all. So.
Wonderful. Those are remarkable and admirable goals. I wish you all the luck and everything the best you can possibly imagine. Last question: what was it like to speak at the United Nations?
Oh yes,
yeah, because that's a biggie, right?
Yeah, that was it was truly incredible. I can't believe it was only like 3 or 4 weeks ago, but. Yeah, in October, it was very empowering to be able to, have that larger platform. I was speaking with kind of 5 other girls from around the globe, and we were each addressing different issues. And my issue that I was addressing was violence against women, and specifically violence against indigenous women. And so I was able to talk about the work I was doing in the play, and then to also kind of call global leaders to action. For, missing and murdered indigenous women and girls, to ask them to do something within their own communities. Because, like I said, I think it is definitely a global issue. And so, I think that I was able to speak it as a young indigenous girl, speaking for, other young indigenous girls who are the victims of violence and whose voices aren't heard. It was definitely remarkable. And, I definitely want to continue to speak for this issue, and so it was really neat to also to hear about the other girls, what they were doing in their own communities around the world.
That must have been, an absolutely unbelievable, the immensity of the experience. My one piece of advice is always use your voice, no matter what anybody tells you. Continue to speak, because that is the most critical thing you can do. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. And please, all the best luck to you and for the project. And I hope your words reach around the world.
Thank you.
Hey kids, thanks for listening to Onstage Offstage. Onstage Offstage is produced monthly, and all of our shows can be found at onstageoffstage.org and also on iTunes. If you enjoy what we do, please recommend us to your friends. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at OnOffStage. And if you are a theater artist with an upcoming project of interest or work in a part of theater we haven't covered yet, or know of someone in the theater world who'd make some great chat, please send us a note at info@onstageoffstage.org. Onstage Offstage believes in and advocates for a world where all people are free to live their lives as they wish, in peace and without fear. We believe in universal respect, diversity, and equality in all areas of life for all people, no matter what their nationality, race, religion, age, sexual status, or gender. Onstage Offstage will never promote or endorse those who seek to diminish others because of who they are. I'm George Sapio. Thank you once again, and happy theatering to all of you.